But my op-ed today is about the draft. And it's over at HartmannReport.com. It's a daily take. It's titled, "What if every billionaire's and senator's kid could be sent to fight in Iran?" And, you know, I point out that we've got all this stuff going on, right, with this war on Iran, which half the Trump administration says isn't a war and the other half gleefully calls a war. And Republicans in Congress are refusing to call a war because they realize that the Constitution says only Congress can declare war, and which is just wild. But we wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for the fact that only 1% of America is currently serving in the military. This tiny, tiny slice of Americans. Only 6% of Americans are veterans. I mean, after World War II, something like 80% of American men were veterans. Over 80% of the people in Congress were veterans. And now it's just this tiny, tiny number. So, you know, what is missing from the whole equation, the whole discussion? Risk. Now, we've found other risks. You know, let's make no mistake here. We have found other risks associated with attacking Iran. They're shutting down the Gulf of Hormuz. The price of oil is going up. Fertilizers, you know, becoming unavailable. You're seeing the cost of urea-based fertilizer go from $400 a ton to almost $700 a ton, you know, in less than a week. You're seeing the price of oil above $100 a barrel. Price of the gas pump is going up. All that kind of stuff. So you could argue that that's a risk that hits the average Americans. That is the exception, though, to the rule. I mean, you know, those are not the kind of things that happened when we attacked Afghanistan or when we attacked Libya or when we attacked Yemen or when we attacked Sudan or when we attacked, I could go through all the way back to Ronald Reagan in Grenada. I mean, you know, it's every Republican president has to have his little war. And basically, there's been no risk associated with any of them since 1973 when Richard Nixon ended the draft. I mean, you know, I remember the Vietnam War really, really well. And, or not the war, but I remember the era, right? And I mean, I hated it. I protested it. I got kicked out of school for those protests. I still curse Nixon and LBJ for the lies that killed over 50,000 of my fellow citizens and 2 million Vietnamese. But that's how it should be. I mean, the American people should be out in the streets when the leadership starts taking us to war on false pretenses. And they're not now. And they're not now because there's no draft. I mean, the draft was what forced our country to confront the human cost of war. And so after Nixon ended the draft, something weird happened. We suddenly started getting wars of choice, because it became really easy for politicians to throw our military into pretty much anything as long as it was only this 1% slice of Americans. And the result has been basically nonstop war ever since. You know, Reagan, Grenada, Bush in Kuwait, Clinton in Kosovo, Bush in Afghanistan and Iraq, Trump in Iran, and others. Joe Biden, you know, we didn't directly participate in Gaza, but kind of helped out. And there were a few other places that we bombed, including Yemen. I mean, you know, so it's really easy to talk this way when your family isn't doing the fighting. So look at other countries that are saying, hey, wait a minute. These are the countries that have a draft. Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Switzerland, Austria, Greece, Israel, South Korea, Singapore, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Now, in Finland, Switzerland, Austria, Norway, and Sweden, you can choose public service. You can work in a hospital. You can do environmental work instead of going to the draft. And in Norway, Sweden, and Israel, women are included in the draft. Now, Israel's kind of the special exception here because they kind of live in a state of war, so yeah, I don't think you can draw a lot of lessons from Israel. But these other countries, they're not super enthusiastic about jumping into wars because everybody has to serve. Countries with universal service become more cautious because the entire society feels the consequences. And there's also a positive aspect to the draft in that virtually every society on earth every culture on earth has rites of passage into adulthood, out of childhood into adulthood. In Catholicism, it's, what is it called? Not conversion. No, it's not communion. There's a word for it in Catholicism. I'm sorry, I'm not Catholic. And I'm not Jewish either, but in Judaism, it's bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. I mean, there's a Muslim equivalent. Basically, every culture has this. Here's how you become a man. Here's how you become a woman. Right? Here's how you make this transition into adulthood. And in secular America, it's basically leaving high school. But for my father's generation and for my generation with Vietnam, it was, being drafted, going into the military. And I would argue that if you had a friendly draft, as it were, and you could argue those of you who don't believe in state power at all or think that the government shouldn't tell you what to do, I get it. There's probably nothing I can do to convince you of this, but I do think that getting out of your local community, having to work and collaborate and cooperate and even live with people who don't look like you, who don't have the same skin color, who don't have the same religion, who don't pray the same way, who don't often speak the same way. This is a good thing. Getting out and seeing the world, this is a good thing. And it only becomes a bad thing, when the country goes to war. And frankly, I think if we had a draft, we'd have a hell of a lot fewer wars. So, we really need to be asking ourselves this simple question. If the road to war with Tehran required the sons and daughters of the billionaires and the political class, and frankly, everybody, to march beside everybody else's kids, would we be bombing Iran right now? I don't think so. What say you?